The Prime Minister personally decided to appoint a serious, known national security risk to our most sensitive diplomatic post. Peter Mandelson was not just a man who had already been sacked twice from government for lying, not just a man who had a public relationship with a convicted paedophile, but a man with links to the Kremlin and China, links so close that they were raised as red flags with the Prime Minister before his appointment. Yesterday, the Prime Minister did not deny that he knew about these links before he appointed Mandelson. He could not deny this because, by his own admission, he had seen the documents that proved the links. I cannot overstate how serious a matter this is. The Prime Minister sent a known security risk to Washington, to a position where he would see our most important allies' top secret intelligence. What if he had seen something and leaked it to one of our enemies? How much would that have damaged our security partnership? We cannot even be sure that didn't happen. What is most extraordinary is the Prime Minister appointed Peter Mandelson before vetting was complete. He did this despite a letter from the then Cabinet Secretary, Lord Case, clearly expressing to the Prime Minister that the process required security vetting to be done before the appointment. So how can he then have claimed on the floor of this House that the process was followed when he knew that it had not been? He mentioned the word process, Mr. Speaker, more than 100 times in Parliament yesterday, but he was the one who didn't follow that process. Yes. This morning, we have heard the bombshell testimony of the former Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, Sir Olly Robbins. Sir Olly Robbins had a long and distinguished career serving ministers. He is not the sort of person to give us a frank personal account of how things played out last January. So when he told us today that Downing Street put the Foreign Office under constant pressure to clear Peter Mandelson, that Number 10 showed a dismissive approach to Mandelson's vetting process, when he told us that it would have been very difficult indeed to deny clearance and that doing so would have damaged US-UK relationships, we know he is giving us the slightest indication of how bad things were. That there was actually an overwhelming drive from the Prime Minister's office to ensure Peter Mandelson was installed as ambassador. He has told us that Number 10 showed no interest in the vetting, no desire to wait and ensure due process was followed. In fact, the Cabinet Office even questioned the need for Peter Mandelson to be vetted at all. The same Cabinet Office that had discovered Mandelson's links to Epstein, China and Russia in its due diligence. The Cabinet Office which the Minister is in charge of right now. Instead, Mr. Speaker, according to Robbins, the focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. And before the vetting even started, Peter Mandelson had already been granted access to, and I quote, highly classified briefing on a case-by-case basis. This is what the Prime Minister calls full due process. Now, yes, I will give way.
Also in the testimony today, did she not find it astonishing that that the ex-leader of the Foreign Office said that he was made to understand that before they had completed their clearances, that Mandelson already had strap clearance, which gives him access to the most secure and most dangerous information held by government?
Can I thank my right honourable friend for that intervention? He is absolutely right. It is extraordinary. It is shocking. Now, the Prime Minister might have refused to answer my question around his knowledge of Mandelson's links to the Russian defence company Sistema yesterday, but that is only because he knows we know the answer. It was there in the due diligence. Yep. His choice of ambassador, retaining an interest in a Russian company linked to Vladimir Putin after the invasion of Crimea. And the Prime Minister's response to seeing that information? According to Robbins, constant pressure on the Foreign Office to get the appointment done. The Prime Minister, as my right honourable friend has just mentioned, placed top secret intelligence in the hands of a man he knew to be a national security risk. He did so before the official security vetting, not just knowingly, but deliberately, and to an extent that left a senior civil servant with a distinguished career under the clear and obvious impression that the vetting must return only one possible outcome, that Peter Mandelson was appointed. None of this was following full due process, by the letter or the spirit of that phrase. This is no longer just about what the Prime Minister was or wasn't told. This is about what he did before the vetting process had even started. Yes. And we now know that Mandelson wasn't a one-off. According to Sir Olly Robbins, number 10 also asked for the disgraced Matthew Doyle, the Prime Minister's then Director of Communications, to be made an ambassador. Astonishingly, the Prime Minister's office even told Robbins to keep this request a secret from the Foreign Secretary. The idea that it is number 10 who are the victims of others not following due process is quite frankly laughable. The Prime Minister told Parliament yesterday that it was staggering that Olly Robbins had not shared the recommendations of the UK security vetting with the then Cabinet Secretary, Chris Wormold. But today, we learned from Robbins that he had never seen the original vetting file. So if the Prime Minister is furious that Sir Olly Robbins did not share the vetting details with him or the former Cabinet Secretary, why is he not furious with the Cabinet Office for not sharing it? Put simply, why exactly did he sack Olly Robbins? It is no surprise the Prime Minister is not here today. These are difficult questions. He cannot claim not to have known about the risk Mandelson posed because he saw the due diligence that disclosed it, as he said yesterday. I still find it inconceivable that despite that failure of vetting being a front-page news story, no one in number 10 was aware of it. He cannot deny that his decision put Britain at risk, and the British public deserve to know how this failure happened, and they deserve to hear it from the Prime Minister himself. Yesterday, he had the chance to set the record straight, but members on all sides, and no doubt the public, were left wholly unsatisfied with the answers he gave. I am sure they will share my deep disappointment that the Prime Minister has chosen not to be here today. There remain serious questions about the decisions he took over the appointment of Peter Mandelson, but the Prime Minister does not want to answer any more questions today, and so in typical fashion, he has thrown someone else under the bus. So I feel for the Minister sent out as a human shield for the Prime Minister. It's not this Minister who made the Mandelson appointment. That was above his pay grade. He cannot tell us what the Prime Minister was thinking when he made those decisions, and he will not be able to provide this House with the answers it deserves to hear. But this is simply what the Prime Minister does. Sue Gray, Matthew Doyle, Morgan McSweeney, Chris Wormold, Olly Robbins, Peter Mandelson. These appointments were the Prime Minister's decision, people the Prime Minister chose to appoint, and all people he then chose to sack. Are we meant to believe that all these people are the problem rather than the Prime Minister's judgment? As usual, his explanations yesterday left us with even more questions than answers. He says that he was justified in appointing Mandelson before vetting because of advice he received from the then Cabinet Secretary, Chris Wormold. But how can this make sense when that advice only came after the scandal had erupted? Post hoc advice is pointless. Soon after this, he then sacked Chris Wormold. So why is the Prime Minister now relying on the evidence of the very man he told us was doing so badly in the job that he sacked him? But let's move on to the Prime Minister's claim that no one in number 10 was aware that Mandelson had failed his vetting. Because enough people in Whitehall knew, enough people knew for journalists from The Independent, The Mail and Sky News to find out. Journalists have released texts with the Prime Minister's Director of Communications where they made number 10 aware of this fact. He did not deny this story was true. Why not? Something simply doesn't add up. Despite this, the Prime Minister went on to assure this House, to assure the public, that Mandelson's appointment was down to a failure of vetting. I cannot fathom how the Prime Minister can still claim not to have misled the House on this point. It is telling that when given the opportunity to apologise for misleading the House, even inadvertently, by my honourable friend for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk yesterday, he chose not to. I suspect that he chose not to because he knows that if he did, he would be bound by his own words, bound by the standards to which he held previous Prime Ministers from this very dispatch box. In 2022, he said that if the Prime Minister misleads the House, he must resign. Either he is a man of his word, or he thinks there is one rule for him and another for everyone else. Mr. Speaker, unbelievably, half of the permanent secretaries who were in post when Labour took office less than 2 years ago have gone. The sacking of senior civil servants to carry the can for the Prime Minister's failures has already cost taxpayers more than £1.5 million in payouts. This is before Sir Olly Robbins. It is quite something for the former Cabinet Secretary, Lord O'Donnell, to warn that the Prime Minister has created one of the worst crises in relations between ministers and mandarins of modern times. He said that the sacking of Sir Olly Robbins risks having a serious and sustained chilling effect on serving and prospective civil servants. Another former Cabinet Secretary, Lord Butler, has said the Prime Minister put Sir Olly in an impossible position.
Yeah, he did.
These are serious people who are calling out the Prime Minister's behaviour. The former head of propriety and ethics and deputy to the Cabinet Secretary, Helen McNamara, has called the decision to sack Robbins unacceptable. She said that if they had published the papers that Parliament demanded back in February, that's the government, if they'd published that, this argument would be so much easier for everyone because we would all be operating on the same basis, the same facts. She's right. The delay in publishing the information required by the humble address is shocking. Where are the key annotations? Where are the decisions and meeting records? The box returns, as they are called, in Downing Street. Why are crucial forms left blank? These missing documents add to the mystery. Why is the government still trying to cover this up? Yes, I will give way.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way. She will remember I asked the Prime Minister yesterday in the box note of the 11th of November, where Simon Case recommended that vetting went through before the appointment was made. The Prime Minister's decision note did not include the Prime Minister's decision, and it's been redacted from the conditions of the humble address. Does she think that the answer that has been redacted would show what the Prime Minister was trying to achieve by appointing Peter Mandelson without the appropriate vetting?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that intervention? He is absolutely right. Why were the Prime Minister's words redacted? These are key pieces of information that will help solve this mystery. Much easier for us to see and understand the words which he was giving at the dispatch box. I note that no Labour MPs have intervened on me. This is very unusual. Normally, when I'm standing here in a debate, they're all bobbing left, right and centre. Mr. Speaker, I'm raising these concerns because of the seriousness of the situation the country is now in. With war in Europe, war in the Middle East, a cost of living crisis and a global energy shock, we need a Prime Minister who has a grip on national security. Yet last week, the former Labour Defence Secretary and former NATO Secretary-General, Lord Robertson, warned that the Prime Minister had a corrosive complacency when it comes to defence. This is the same man who wrote the Prime Minister's Strategic Defence Review. He is ringing the alarm bell, warning us of the grave consequences of the government refusing to take the tough choices needed to increase defence spending. This matters because if we cannot trust our Prime Minister to tell the truth about this ambassadorial appointment, the whole, full truth, a key appointment in Britain's national security architecture, it calls into question the assurances he gives us on everything else. His promises to control taxes, which he has broken. His promises not to raise borrowing, which he has broken. Promises to back business, protect our veterans, defend our farmers, and prioritise growth, all of which he has broken. and he has broken them because at his core he is a man with no idea what he believes. Worse still, he appears to have no interest in doing the job of Prime Minister, just in being the Prime Minister. Curiosity is what drives serious leadership. Without curiosity, problems are neither fully understood nor solved. And this whole affair just goes to show why this country is heading in such a woeful direction under the Prime Minister's incurious regime. His defence yesterday summed it up. He says that no one told him and that he never thought to ask. This is, in his own words, incredible. But even if we take the Prime Minister at his word, even if we believe the unbelievable, it is no better. He appointed Mandelson despite knowing that he was a threat to our national security. He said due process was followed, having failed to follow that process himself, and he pressured the Foreign Office into signing off on this appointment. In 2022, the Prime Minister said, "I believe that if you're the leader, the buck stops with you." He said, "I will always stand up for my team, but I will also take responsibility for everything they do." That is what leadership is. How has he taken responsibility? It is clear that the Prime Minister has no intention of facing up to his mistakes. It's clear now that he is not a leader and he has no intention of doing the honourable thing.
On that point, will the Right Honourable Lady give way?
Yes, I will give way.
I congratulate her on securing this debate and indeed on eviscerating the Prime Minister in her speech. Does she not believe, however, that the sorry souls opposite us should have to put their money where their mouth is and that there should be a vote of no confidence in this Prime Minister in due course?
The right honourable gentleman makes a very good point. I think he is right, because I don't believe the Prime Minister has the intention of doing the honourable thing himself, even though that's the standard to which he held everyone else. The decision, as I said, about whether he will ultimately take responsibility for his actions is now up to Labour MPs. We heard many powerful statements from that side of the House yesterday. Labour MPs know that the Prime Minister has let the country down, he's let Parliament down, and he's also let the Labour Party down. It is clear to everyone, except the Prime Minister himself, that he has failed on his own terms. It is clear to the public that he is failing at the job. It is clear to civil servants that he is throwing them under the bus. And it is clear to members across this House that he is not fit to lead. This cannot go on. This House deserves better. The country deserves better. The Prime Minister is not fit for office. The first duty, Mr. Speaker, of any Prime Minister is to keep this country safe. This Prime Minister has put the country's national security at risk. He must take responsibility. It is time for him to go.